This movie destroyed some boundaries inside of me, and I think in you too, because you're here. Made me to think much more about myself, about my feelings, about my stereotypes. And because I'm different. I still see every day, eyes watching me and questioning me. So now we are here because we would like to hear your questions, your point of view about the movie and about the actors, which are gorgeous. We spoke until now and I was, wow, they're so lovely. And I like to start with giving you a moment to think for the first question is coming in your head, in your mind, and just name it. In the next step, I will ask Adina, how is for you to see these faces, thinking about what they see, the stereotypes you break, and how do you feel about it? What did you feel when you saw first time the people's faces after the movie?
So let's take it step by step. I would. It's a good question, and I won't forget it. We would, because this film is like before everything, it's an invitation to dialogue. So we would like to open the floor to questions from the very beginning.
Congratulations for the movie. It was disturbing and beautiful. And my question is, how much of it was real and how much was it directed?
So you mean what is directed is not real?
Not necessarily.
There's a contradiction between filmmaking and reality. You think?
Yes,
I understand your question. I'm playing a bit. I understand where the question is coming from. What I can tell you is that we worked with a fusion of reality and fiction. We worked with a mix of personal material and fictionalized elements. And we usually keep the privacy of the process in the sense that one of the rules of the game, if you want, was that nobody needed to know where the material that we bring in the process comes from. So you don't need to know if we come in a situation, because basically the fiction functioned more like a sort of skeleton. The fiction helped us to create this incubator, this emotional incubator, which put us all together and created the premises for us to explore things. So nobody needed to say, in this context, where the material comes from, if it's a memory, if it's imagination, if it's a dream, or if it's a fear about the future.
Okay, so the storytelling was actually built on truth.
It's just a matter of words. I can tell you that what you see happening between people there, it's authentic interaction between people, and then you can discuss a lot how the fiction is involved also in our daily life, because like Laura at one point was, I think you are a bit better of explaining how that worked emotionally for you, because Laura was saying at one point that this kind of fusional space in between reality and fiction offered her and offered us much more freedom than a classical documentary or a classical fiction setting would offer us, because you said at one point that you accessed areas or possibilities of yourself that you wouldn't have, you maybe never would have explored in your life. Could you take on that?
Your unconscious can latch on to part of that story, and you can actually say a lot more in an invented story. So it's like Adina's saying, is between what's real and what's fiction, in fiction you can put a lot of real. So after a moment, you're basically saying what's factual and what's not factual. But authenticity hasn't got to do with facts. So in a story, in a situation, your unconscious is going to express itself. Like in a dream. What you're dreaming is an invented story, but within that dream, there's something very real. And it's slightly coded. So there's something just slightly off. But that offness puts you into a different space where you can actually express things.
Thank you. Very beautifully explained.
And you know that, for example, in a fictional situation, you are kind of a prisoner of a scripted character, whereas in a documentary, you are again prisoner in your daily persona, let's say. It's the role that we play every day. So let's say in a non-fiction situation, you are much more afraid, of not being judged. There is that tension in front of the camera, which doesn't allow you, let's say, the freedom that we needed in this exploration. Whereas in a safe space like this, in a hybrid space like this, not having to say where you bring the material from, sometimes in something that sounds like a fantasy, you can bring a lot of material from yourself, and you can also, I wouldn't say alter it, you can transform it. It's just it's very fascinating. It's like in dreams. It's very good.
It's alchemy. Alchemy?
Alchemy, emotional alchemy.
And if you permit me, I can say this is in everybody, every person have this fantasy, this own reality. It's just the fear to name it and to put it in the reality. All of us have it.
And to act on it.
Yeah, this is the point. Just do it. Feel it and do it. Don't feel it and hide it.
And there's something about a particular space where, like on a stage or where you're in a coded space, is no one's going to say after you're a really nasty person. You can actually say really nasty things and people are going to say that's really wonderful. But in life, people are going to say, how could you possibly have said that? So you don't actually pay for what you do, because in that space, that part of the human being that isn't accepted in reality and in society is actually adored in a creative space, because you're not in the same rules.
Yeah, true, because we need to accept our shadows, so to speak. So that's why we accept it in the movies.
But shadows are accepted a lot more easily in a creative space than they are in society.
And this helps us to accept it more and more in real life.
Okay, I'm 58 years old.
Yes,
Well done.
Congratulations, Elvira.
Happy birthday to a woman.
And I thought after your movie that I live for nothing.
It's never too late for anything.
Yes.
What does that?
I like very much the actress. 50 years old, it's about my age. And it's about love, not sex, not differences about this point of view. Sorry, my English. My son told me everywhere that, oh, Mama, your English is so bad. But this is a movie about love. This is a movie about connecting people, yes? It's not about naked body, it's not about sex, it's not about these things. It's about connection and love. And this movie touched me very well.
Thank you very much for the feedback. And
Yes.
your English is very okay.
My daughter says the same thing to me, so it's okay.
I think also when you talk about love, it's also about accepting oneself and accepting to be vulnerable. And it's very difficult to love or to be loved when you can't accept vulnerability, either within yourself or within other people. And that's where the nakedness comes in.
So, me personally, I live in a bubble, and I'm super privileged that all my friends live in this bubble with me. And when I was watching the film, it's, I don't know, an hour and a half, I was looking and I thought, this film is about me, it's about my life. This is reality, this is how it is. And at some point I had this moment and no, this is a film. This is public. Other people are gonna see it. Other people are gonna see me, how my life is. And the bubble kind of popped at that moment. Do you guys ever feel like this pressure from this world that the movie creates and the outside of this movie? Because I feel like I needed to see this film so much, and I needed it to exist, and I hope so much that it's just gonna keep on pushing and make the bubble bigger until it becomes the world. And I'm just wondering how you feel, if there's pressure from the outside.
I'd say I feel relief, which is the opposite to pressure. There's a sense of relief, I'd say from the spectator's point of view, which is a bit what you're saying is the bursting of the bubble, is the releasing of the pressure. And from my point of view within the film, the letting go is about releasing the pressure. And the releasing of a pressure, which is I mean, I've always felt terribly inadequate in my life, on many, many levels, as an actor as well. And it's got so much to do with wanting to be loved, which is what you were saying earlier on, and being accepted. And when you actually can let go and say, excuse my French, as the English would say, fuck it, there's such a sense of relief, which is basically not just saying to hell with the pressure.
How many of you felt inadequate at a certain
In our
point
life,
in
at
our
one
lives?
point.
Put your arms up, put your arms up. Woo, 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 woo. We should do it the other way around. Who doesn't put their arm up? One person.
Oh, yes, because she assumed her multiple personalities. We talk here about a very, very complex artist who took the freedom to be herself, which not many of us took. It was a struggle. And yeah, I let you.
It's very difficult to have this kind. It's quite of personalities, multiple personalities, but actually it's up of who you are and intersectionality between yourself and the other one inside of you. So I can say I felt this when I saw Hannah's role, because for me it wasn't a fiction, it wasn't our lives, it wasn't bodies, it was only something which we live every day. So I'll try, if Hannah wants to tell us how is to put those personalities there, the intersectionality, and how was for you to feel, to put your body there, your feelings there.
Well, okay. I was hired as a sex worker, I remember. And I started and I felt comfortable just suggesting I do my profession here. Yeah? Forget about the film, forget that it's a film at all. Yeah? You have a client, this client is female, this is an exception from your normal clients, and just try to satisfy him. Yeah? But this was the position before, yeah, okay, and I also make the installation like this. I didn't want to talk to Laura before. I wanted to have a call, like in my normal profession, and I also wanted to see her not before I entered her apartment. And this was, if you talk about my profession, if I see a client the first time, it's always a certain sort of thrill, a certain sort of tension you have, yeah? Who is it? You get the voice at the phone, yeah? And then you imagine how the client is, and the same film run up. And when the door opened, the moment was, in a certain sense, it was magic a little bit, yeah. Also because of this environment, and I was prepared by Adina what to do, not to look in the camera, for instance, and my English is not so good, and I was afraid. The second technical problem was I was afraid about my English because because my partner is an English, a genuine English, and if we make a discussion, the difference will be apart. And so I was a little bit afraid of it, and Alina gave me the advice: just if you forget an English word, just say it in German. We will make a translation and cut it out or something like this. And so I was quite satisfied and felt comfortable at the beginning, but I feel that this meeting with a client is something complete other than with my normal male clients. Okay, my male clients are also very different, but in a certain point, mostly they happen the sexual arousal and the things go. Yeah? And here was a woman afraid of her body and very distanced, and I had had no idea how to waken her up and so on, and how to help her. And finally, I decided, okay, forget about all. I tried to strip, for instance, yeah, which I never did before, and so I put me into the position of a complete amateur. Yeah? This was, so I completely lost my professional view. It's completely other than Shawnee Love. Shawnee Love is not here, that's a pity, but if you watch him, he's very accustomed to this female clients and knows very good to handle them. Yeah, I was completely stuck.
Do you expect to see in your client the stereotypes they wait from you, or something? We talked before about makeup, for example. Yeah. Did you expect to have this request from your client?
When I meet a client the first time, I normally ask him what his suggestions are. Yeah, but I have to admit that the answers are sometimes very incomplete, and I have really to guess what he wants when we meet the first time. Also, in the beginning of my career, it happened sometimes that the client left because it didn't satisfy him or it didn't fit his expectations. Yeah, but. I get more routine and also the interesting point is when the client is, I meet clients several times, yeah. There's sometimes a change, there's sometimes hidden desires, yeah, which he didn't tell me at the first time, or he enjoys when I do not confront him with stereotype dressing, but I change the dressing like this, and so on. Optic is, in these situations, often optic is a very important thing. Yeah. But on the other hand, I have also developments with clients with strange wishes which sometimes are stereotypes the same. Yeah, they always come to practice the same. But others, we just discover something new. Yeah? So it's also a big, a wide variety of what can happen.
The button. I can say that sometimes in our real life we are playing roles just because we need to do it. So this fiction with our life is getting together.
Fiction and daily life.
Daily life, yeah.
We opened this conversation because I remember when we met Hannah, that was very interesting about you, the fact that you were exploring the different possibilities of your personalities.
Yeah.
You remember? So, and also the whole quest you went through in terms of gender and identity was very complex. So if you can share a bit of your journey over the years, that would be interesting.
We had an interesting conversation at the dinner when we said, when we start as a transsexuals, when we make our outing, yeah, we want to position us as in a binary world, yeah, being very perfect, almost a perfect women, also quasi, would say also overcompensating a little bit, yeah. But when you and also I developed several roles for me. It's not always the same. I had it's maybe strange to you, but I have a certain sissy soul, playing a young and a very naive woman. Yeah, I also have a dominant side. Yeah, and also yeah. So difference, and also I play the games as my clients want, yeah. And in between a short time, mostly I'm in it. If I couldn't fulfill this, what he expects, he will not come again. Yeah. So it was a great experience for me to discover my sexuality with these different clients with different wishes. So, and sometimes it happens, it's lucky. On the other hand, okay, I have to say, okay, I cannot serve you. Sorry. And after several years, I think the directions were clear now. Yeah. So this personality problem, when we meet. Problem, situation or something like this is not the same now. So I sometimes I forget a little bit of it because I develop further. Yeah. Also, it's a pity that I'm shown only as a sex worker in the film. Yeah, I would also like to show you when I run my real estate company, for instance. Yeah, or when you watch me gambling at the poker game. So it's a completely different personality because the need is completely different. Yeah. Also, in very much roles, I forget whether I'm a male or female. I'm just a working person. I'm just a very concentrated working person, yeah. And this, I think, it develops more and more in this direction. Transsexuality, even transsexuality, is not so important for me than it was when I met Adina first, yeah, or when I had my outing, yeah. So it's fluent.
Yeah. So genders for you are pretty fluid and helps you to do your act, let's say.
Personal exploration, let's say.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
And that was fascinating when I met Hannah, basically, because this film in its core, it's a film about personal freedom. It's about like being what you want to be, exploring what you can be, no matter what the pressures of society are or expectations or fictions that we grow up with. And Hannah was like, you know, I mean, it just gradually we started to discover each other. And the possibilities of personality, the freedom of exploring, like for example, your own gender, your own like sexuality was fascinating about Hannah. And you know, Hannah, she's just doing it. She's not conceptualizing it necessarily. She's just living it. It's an experiential.
It's instinct.
And you were explaining to me, like, you thought for a long while that you want to be a woman, but then when you came out and you felt you didn't really fit into the cliche of woman, and then when we met, you described yourself as an intersex animal with multiple personalities, as far as I remember. Is it still valid?
Well, I would say yes. There are several personalities a little bit dropped, yeah, and others came through. In the last years, my company became more and more of interest, and it grows, and so I come more and more in the position of manager of a manager, let's say. Yeah? Or I discovered when I was young, I was a bridge teacher. This card playing, which I teach persons, and now I had this flash and devote to poker play. Yeah? This is also a completely other personality what you need, and so yeah, in a certain sense it's fascinating, and also when I meet a client, I make a little bit prostitution in the reduced case. But it's quite fascinating. I have two phones, one for the normal business and one for the sex business. If the sex business comes, I take the phone and even the voice changes.
Oh, I experienced that. I experienced that. I called on the wrong one at one point.
And then the client wants to come in between half an hour. And then I have to decide, okay, I didn't want to do something else. I was struggling with something else. Okay, calm down. And first I start to dress. What does he want? Okay, I take this shirt and this skirt and maybe this high heels. And then I look a little bit in the mirror and think, well, okay. And so in between 15 minutes it changes. Yeah? And this is a really fascinating moment. Yeah? And then I open the door, the client comes, and I'm what he wants. I hope so. I hope so.
So much about your question about fiction and reality. Now it's kind of destabilized everything, I guess.
I would like to make a correction, and it's a professional thing. I have to do it. You said when you want to be, and it's not like to be a trans is not a wish. So that's why I'm correcting you. When you feel. Because free gender, you feel it. You feel it because for me, for example, it's not so fluid. For me, have stereotypes. For me, I have to be like somehow. If I'm not like this, I'm not perfect. I have issue with my body, myself.
I understand.
So that's why.
Yeah, there's a difference. I admire Conchita Wurst, for instance, yeah, because he breaks up cliches. Yeah, just to remember, I don't know whether you like it or you don't. Yeah, but this is exactly this person which breaks up cliches and thinks, okay, doesn't matter. But what I have to add is because before my outing, I felt this very strong pressure to do so. To become a woman. I felt this strong pressure. But when the outing had taken place, I changed my city where I was living, I changed almost everything. Yeah? And so change was relatively easy because I left behind me my wife, I left behind me the old friends and so on. I even devoted to no professions. And so, it's like a computer, Neustart. Reset.
Mai avem două întrebări, mai avem aici una.
I want to ask, are you ever scared of your multiple personalities? Because for me, even being the same gender every day, since always,
Please don't confuse multiple personalities with fluid genders. It's different.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but she says that it's a different persona, or I don't know how to put it, in different contexts, and all this transformation. My question is, are you ever scared of not knowing exactly who you are? Because I am, and it seems like you're not. Are you?
This is enter the area of erkenntnis of Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Not German words. The areas of Kenntnis theory, but the point is, what for me is fascinating, what I want to do, not what I am. That's the difference, I think. Yeah, I want to play bridge. I want to play poker. I want to run a company. I want to go to the stock market. I want to be a prostitute. So how shall I behave? Where it does come from, I cannot explain. But if I devote to a job which I like, I forget myself, and that's the most happiness I can have.
Thank you.
Okay.
But how was the gender experience? There's not a job necessarily.
The gender experience. Okay, this was, I have to remember because my outing is 12 years away and sometimes I forget a little bit. I have the feeling I have solved the problem 12 years before, which I had really, which made me really sad. Because I couldn't, I thought I'm not able to live as a woman. Because it's, I get socially an outsider, I would drop out, I would get divorced, I don't know how to earn money and so on and so on and so on. And that made me really unhappy. And when I looked for the right moment to do so, when my daughter was adult, for instance, it was important for me that she didn't go to school. I'm sorry, that they cannot be hurt by their fellow pupils or something like this. And my wife had a crisis in his job, and his job, the crisis was over. It was also important for me. And I got saw new chances for a new profession in Leipzig. I could move another town, and I could take up a new profession. And when these perspectives all worked, I decided to make this transition. So, but it was really lucky, and it was a very long period of unhappiness.
Okay. Another question there. Here. Okay.
So you said that sometimes parts of your personality manifest even when different phones ring. When such parts of your personality manifest, do you feel like they lock the other ones out, or can they still influence each other?
It's more an abrupt change than a fluid. I think so. Yeah. It's also it's as abrupt as my change was as when I outed myself. Yeah. I would say so. If I'm in this situation, I'm very concentrated. I cannot watch me completely. I have just to do what I want to do. Yeah. So it's a little bit difficult, but I don't think so. Maybe somebody should watch me and give the answer. I cannot.
Am recunoscut exercițiile din mai multe ramuri, ca să zic așa, terapia corporală și chiar tantra. Care este background-ul tău în așa ceva? E foarte important să aflu. Și dacă ai vrut să scoți pe ecran, în afară de alte simboluri pe care le-am văzut și sunt foarte relevante, dacă într-o mică măsură ai vrut să scoți pe ecran și să obișnuiești publicul cu ele încet, încet, ca să se intereseze mai bine de capacitatea de healing.
The question is, you said, you recognized some elements from body therapy and tantric work, and he was wondering what's my background on it, and if I had it as a sort of a purpose, a sort of to bring them out and raise awareness, basically, about it. I hope I translated everything. So that's an interesting question, because this brings me to the very nature of this film. This film, it's called a research. It's basically a research about intimacy, about sexuality, about our body. And this research took quite a long time, so we explored several areas. Like, for example, we worked with several therapists. In Romania, we worked with a psychoanalyst with a lot of experience. Madam Ioana Botezat Antonescu was one of the constant consultants of the film. She was working more in the psychoanalysis area. And we worked also with a body therapist in the Netherlands. So there is also a bibliography of the film. So we have several titles, which I think we are going to make a separate post on Facebook with all the titles. But some influential books in our research were, for example, Arousal from Michael Bader, the American psychoanalyst, and also Esther Perel, which was translated in Romania, like. It was translated Inteligența Erotică, but the title in English is much, much better. It's Mating in Captivity, Reconciling the Erotic and the Domestic. And several other books, like, for example, Attachment in Psychotherapy by David Vallin. And this is basically the film. It's starting from this idea that I also mentioned in the film, that when I was 20, I thought I knew how things function. You know, I had all the certainties in the world. I thought I knew how relationships should function, how desire functions, what beauty is, all this kind of, like, you know, truths, if you want. And the thing is that with the next 20 years, like in experiencing life, all these ideas got destabilized. You know, I keep saying that, but it's never enough because it's at the very core of the process. And I realized that basically reality is much more complex than these constructions that we grow up with in our family, in society, and from books, from school. And this whole process that you also see a part of in the film, because it's more complex than what you see in the film, started with this intention to try to forget everything I thought I knew and to discover with openness how people really experience intimacy. And you know, a lot of ideas that I came in the process with got changed, got put under question, you know, puse sub semnul întrebării. Like, for example, this whole perspective on the sex work, I came into this process with the same general cliches that sex work means just money exchange against sex, and this very simplifying view on this otherwise very complex palette of services. And actually, the work that Shonilov is doing in the film, which is the other sex worker, it's also a real sex worker. It's a combination exactly between what you said. It's a combination between Jungian therapy and tantric work with also tools from SM, the so-called shadow work, like they call it the shadows are these aspects, the dark side of yourself. I always argue about that because if you call it a shadow, you already put a judgment on that. That it's something, I don't know, dark, negative. Whereas there is this whole concept of shadow, which is more familiar in the shamanism, and we have also a shaman in the film. Thomas Le Marquis is also a shaman. I mean, nobody in this film is just what you see on the screen. They are much more complex personalities. Like Laura, for example, she's not only an actress, she's also an acting teacher, and she has a lot of experience in personal development workshops. Christian and Grit also have like a lot of experience in different areas. So, Shani, it's doing this kind of like mixed work, which is sex work, but it's so far removed from the usual cliches, and it's highly therapeutic for many people. He's like also beyond being a therapist, he hesitates to call himself a therapist. Sex work, it's somewhere on the fringe, and it's about you know, what's the status of sex work? Because, for example, in Romania, sex work is not legal. In Germany, it's legal. Then there are different kinds of certificates that you take as a therapist, which are always questionable. I mean, we do, how is the status of sex work in Romania, of sexual services? Do you know?
In this moment, sexual sex work in Romania, it's illegal, as you said. And we, like an organization, like an associations, we are trying to improve healthcare and many other things. Your question in the end was,
the question is, I was opening a bit the conversation because, for example, in UK, that I was trying to work with authentic sex workers and I couldn't do it in Romania because it's not legal.
Yeah, because it's not legal and because a lot of trans person in Romania who's a sex worker is somehow hidden.
Hidden,
and and you're gonna ask me how is this? Is making sex work but it's hidden? No, it's in that way because they make their own bubble and they live there and they want money from there and that's only thing they can image to be safe and to just do it. And yes, and as Adina says, is much more than sex work.
That's the thing, because we are at the level where we discuss is that legal or not. But actually the conversation is much more complex.
No, it's much more complex.
And in UK, for example, they have this event which is called Sexual Freedom Awards, where they are basically the profession, it's recognizing the achievements of their members. Like, for example, Shani Love got the award, like in 2015, he got the award for the Best Sex Worker of the Year. And if you look at the concept of these awards, they are very much human rights oriented. They talk about, inclusion, acceptance of difference. They talk about the importance of exploring your sexuality and to have the freedom of expressing yourself as a sexual person.
It's as we talked before, it's much more than sexuality, than sex. There is not bodies and sex, because
there's the whole emotional, psychological, spiritual experience which is connected to sexuality.
And it's about personalities. It's about when you have your client, identities, personalities, because you have your client which have requests, and you have to do it. You have to make your clients to be satisfied and to see on his face or she's face, I don't know, the satisfied, that she's satisfied or he's satisfied. No, am I right? So you have to play your, how to say? Help me a little bit.
You have to
identity. Deliver, you mean?
Yeah.
No, just satisfy your client. If it's a male client, if it's a female client, I cannot discuss about.
No, I think the word satisfaction, it's a matter of words that we go back to the words which are limiting a bit the discussion, because sometimes it's not a matter of satisfaction, it's a matter of, like if you see the interaction between Laura and Shani, what is that? Like, it's not about satisfying Laura, it's about transformative interaction. Yeah. It's about
questioning.
Maybe, yes. Can we talk about how Shani started?
Oh, that would be interesting.
Because we were doing a debate in London and nobody had seen the film. So it totally changed the debate. And I suddenly asked Shani, I said, but how did you become a sex worker? And he got very moved. And it was a very unexpected question for him and quite an intimate question. And he explained that he had a girlfriend who'd been raped and had a lot of difficulty in having a sexual intercourse. And she asked him to reenact because she trusted him. And he also had explained that when he was young, he had a very, very huge sexual appetite. And he said, you know, you can't go up to a girl and say, hey, can you come and fuck me? So he'd say, would you like to go to the library? And he felt very, very inadequate and didn't know what to do with his sexuality and with his sexual impulses. And he felt very wrong and disgusting and vile. And when this woman said to him, I've got this problem and you can help me, she'd been raped by a man who was drunk. and she asked him to soak himself in alcohol and directed him millimetre by millimetre, saying, put your hand there, breathe, sigh, put your hand in, you know, and she reenacted the whole thing, and she went through this very, very big emotional process and actually freed herself from what she went through previously and could therefore after have sexual interaction. And that's how he became a sex worker. He realised that he had this capacity with what beforehand was something very criticisable and disgusting and horrible could be actually a service to other people. And that's how he started.
So every sex worker have a real story behind. It's not about judging, it's about questioning.
And about things being put in the right place. Like, you know, if you put one energy into a particular area, it's very negative and destructive. And if it's put into a different area, it becomes enhancing and freedom making.
We had another question somewhere here. Billy?
It starts with some assumptions. And so this film is about the journey. And the first assumption, I think, is that this journey is worth taking. And it's mainly for you, Laura. And that it's hard. It's a difficult journey. But you have to keep on your journey. You have to go somewhere with it. And could you please correct me if my assumptions are wrong, or just tell me why was it worth taking? Why was it worth doing this journey of self-discovery? Because some people never do. Some people go to the grave and never know anything about themselves and their boundaries or desires. And was it difficult? How did you overcome it? And can you give advice for the rest of us?
I think when you choose to put yourself in a difficult situation, the thing is when you're forced to be in a difficult situation. So everywhere I went in the film, I chose to go there. Nobody forced me. And that makes the experience very, very different. And when I teach and I see students suffering, I say, never forget you chose to be in the place you're at. And when I had my first meeting with Adina, she said, what are you looking for? And I said, I'm looking for a state of grace. And the times in my life where I've had an absolute sense of freedom is when I've confronted my limits. And I know it's scary, but like I say in the film, there's a little bit of me that knows that I want to go there. And it puts me in a very difficult, oops, it's difficult, but it puts me in a situation of, it's my choice. And I get a sense of relief when I expose myself and let go. I'm well aware of the relief that I'm getting despite the fact that it's difficult. So I'm not just suffering. I think it's got to do with never forgetting what you want and why you're doing it. If you put yourself into the situation of being a victim, but if you always think, I've chosen to be where I am and I have the opportunity. I mean, for me, doing Adina's film was an opportunity. I mean, I'm so thankful for doing this film. And it's a choice. And also, it's a relationship. You know, I wouldn't put myself through that with, you know, there are some very, very mad people out there. In theatre and film, there are some very mad, sick people out there who really like taking power.
You are judging.
I know, and I'm talking from experience here. And I couldn't do that with someone that wasn't. There's one thing about Adina is in the film, in a way, she's hoping you're going to answer questions that she's asking. So in the relationship, you're actually a door. And it's a very, very different relationship to working with a director who wants to absolutely get a particular thing out of you. So it's a sharing experience. And that changes a lot of things.
Because we do research together, you know, like...
I know, sweetie.
Like, we never, like, that was this whole discussion, and I'm coming from a film school, which I very much respect, but has this model of filmmaking, where you have to know what you have to do, you plan it everything on paper, and then you execute it. That's a good training, it's like an army. But it took me years to understand that that's actually not interesting for me in terms of filmmaking, that I am interested in cinema as a tool for discovery, for, I don't know, for growth, for understanding each other better, for connection. And that's what the film is, in a way.
Beyond what the film actually means, you go beyond this.
Yes, and we try to do it because this film, it's in the core of dialogue. We basically bring this dialogue beyond the cinema. That's what we try to do with this debate, open debate format, politics of the body, and like, please spread the word if possible. We go with this series of debates around the country the coming days. Like tomorrow we go to Cluj, then to Iași, Sibiu, Brașov. I think it's a necessary conversation. Coming back to why am I doing, because that's what also Laura was talking about, like to try to stay connected with what's important for you, like at an existential level, if you want. So when I started this research, there was this whole tension between these ideas that we grow up with, these expectations about what we should be, how we should behave, all this normative fiction, as I call them again and again, and the reality of life, you know, like people can be in so many ways, can connect in so many unexpected ways. They can live their sexuality in ways which are totally different than the norm, but they are still humanly like very interesting and very valid. And I realized that basically, you know, there is such a huge drama if you are not aware of it. So if you try your whole life to just fit certain expectations and certain labels, this is the source of so many depressions and imbalances and unhappiness. Whereas this kind of research that I did together with these wonderful people was just, you know, it was revealing in this way, in this respect, that to be different, you know, the so-called non-normative, it's as normal as the normative, you know. There can be so many ways in which you can live your life and to experience your body that are okay.
My assumption, was it difficult? Was your journey difficult?
I mean, it's always difficult, you know, because the structures that you grow up with, they are so strong that you are not even aware they exist. They are just implemented in your system, because the way we live our intimacy as adults, it's so deeply influenced by that period, especially by that period before you have words for memories, that it's in your system. So basically you think that's how you are. You think that you are, for example, you feel that you want to be a woman, you are a man, and then you think you are wrong. You have to go to the doctor and to repair yourself. You know, that's an option. That's an option. But then, if you just look around and you understand that, man, things can be so different. I can be whatever I want to be, you know, it doesn't matter whomever what thinks. that's a completely different perspective, which I think it's a very healthy dialogue to have.
And everything has something very deep in the back. It's not just what you see, sex worker, trans person, okay, they are changing their bodies. It's not only this, it's much more deep. And I'll go a little bit further. You had a question? Or it was a microphone there? Oh.
I'm very curious about the casting process. How and where and where did you find these amazing people? And
They are everywhere. I mean,
Advertisement.
huh?
Advertisement.
Yes, warning. you mean warning, no? No. No, I think you said warning, no? What is in German?
Advertising. My English is so bad.
Oh. So you were, what do you mean by advertising?
You put an
Okay,
advertisement.
now I got
So
it.
we meet each other. Otherwise we never would have met.
Yes, that's true. So it was a sort of a research, if you want. It was not like a regular casting. Do we have to go, Ioana? No?
Mai avem o așteptare în spate la o întrebare de mai devreme. Da, se poate.
We didn't answer the question. We'll go back to that.
We have time, don't worry. No, everybody can
I think it's on. My question is connected to the previously one. I want to ask you for a character that is not here and could not be here, Christian. For me, it was very interesting. Can you tell us something about him?
Sure. First of all, that I think I started to say here because I don't know if I said he got a bit. He got stuck in Mexico now, where he was there with Grit. They are a couple in real life, and they were together to introduce the film and to hold the debate, Politics of the Body, for the Mexican premiere. And unfortunately, he got sick because of the dust and pollution in Mexico, because his breathing is sensitive. So even a simple cold can be challenging for him. And he cannot fly at the moment. He will hopefully be here the coming days. We don't know exactly when. Yes, he was planned to be here this evening. But he is one of our most outspoken advocates. He travels everywhere in the world, much more than all of us. And I was joking also about this, that he's constantly suing air companies for non-accessibility issues. And he never wins, but he feels it's still important to do it in the attempt to change something. He is an activist for human rights. Together with Grit, they are passionate advocates for the right of persons with differently able bodies to intimacy and to sexuality. Most of the protagonists had quite a clear idea when they came in the process, a personal motivation for which they participated in this research on intimacy. And for him it was very clear from the very beginning, back in 2013 already, he was foreseeing some of the events now, and he said, he said it in, I don't remember exactly, I will try to, so he said, I'm not afraid this film is gonna be criticized, or me or you. The people who are gonna criticize such a film are the people who have no idea about the relationship between disability and intimacy. They have their own preconceived ideas about us. They consider us usually as sexual beings that only need to be taken care of, whereas for me it's very important to share with an audience, and our project is not the only project that he does. He does a lot of socially oriented, let's say, projects to raise awareness about the rights of people with differently able bodies. He said, it's very important for me to share with an audience that us, the people with differently able bodies, have the same right to exist as sexual beings like anybody else, and we have the same desires, the same needs like anybody else. So he was quite clear, simplistically clear, But then the whole process became complex on the way. So actually I found him talking about the casting. We go back to the question. It was not like a regular casting. It was more like searching for like-minded people that would be interested in the same research. And that had also this need to enter in a dialogue with an audience, because it's not just isolated research that we do with ourselves, it's something that is done through cinema. So it's a dialogue with an audience. So I met Christian in a festival which is called Explore, a festival on the art of lust. It's a concept of a festival focused on personal development on the themes connected to sexuality. So they have 3 days of workshops. It happens in Berlin, in Paris, in London, in Copenhagen. It's a hub. And they have days. There was one day on the physical aspect of sexuality, workshops on this topic. One day with workshops on the spiritual aspect of sexuality, and one day on the emotional aspect of sexuality. And there was a whole debate because all these areas of physicality, emotionality, and spirituality, they are so fluid. So there were whole debates why an workshop is in that day and not in the other day. So I met him at a workshop on intimacy and mortality, basically. Yes. And I had the chance to be in a group with him because we worked with a therapist that works with a psychotherapist, which is working with dying people. And he did this exercise of death awareness with us. So he put us in several groups and we had to pick some numbers. And at one point he would say, that number, it's gonna go out. And until he will call this number, we were supposed to share with each other the reason why we are there, to get to know each other. So he wanted us to experience how it is to be thrown out of life, let's say, of an experience which you enjoy and when you discover others and you connect with others. Christian, just before I was called to go out, was explaining that for him, the relationship with death, it's a very close one, that it's a friend of his, it's a part of his daily life, because ever since he was born, he was told that he's gonna die very soon. And this never happened. But he grew up with this Damocles sword all his life, which basically informed his connection with everything, his connection with his own body, his connection with the people around him. So he has this unbelievable, good energy that you can see also in the film. He's like a sort of a spiritual guide for our entire process. I've never met, I think, a person to have such a harmonious and rich relationship with his own body. That was highly inspiring for all of us. So this was for me striking because he was just explaining his connection with the death and how he is basically enjoying life every day, and his coffee in the window. He's enjoying a lot, and I was like, with my cynicism, how do you enjoy it? Because you cannot drink a coffee. I was really rude in that question. And he says, well, I use a straw. He's also very positive, it's not like there is no, he can be mean in some points, it's a matter of, he is very good, very balanced in negotiating his own borders. And his own borders, for a person with a differently able body, it's a very complex discussion because their intimacy, it's always challenged, it's always invaded because they need to be taken care of. The assistants, handle them every day. So, I have so many things to tell you, but I don't want to monopolize. Let's go to further question. I can tell you more.
I'd like to say, until the microphone is going in the backside, I'd like to say that it's much more important to question our hidden part of us and to go out of our comfort.
Hidden, you mean, no?
Yeah, hidden.
No, just to help you understand.
Yeah. So let's question ourselves and let's go out of our comfort. It's very easy to say, okay, this is my boundaries, here I'm stopping. But let's go beyond this. Let's go on the other side to see what's happening. It's very easy to say, I don't like this because, and because, and because reasons. Go after. Try to put yourself beyond the boundaries. And we had another question.
Compliments to all of you for such a really very hard research, I think. And it's really very important that these movies does not stay only in a festival and it goes in.
We hope so.
Yes. Okay, we know now that it will be from 15 cinemas and that's great. We hope to stay here
from
for
today
weeks.
on, and from today on, it's going to be traveling around the country with the debates with the protagonists, and it's coming back to Bucharest. That in the One World Weekend, we are still here, basically for the release. And maybe it's good to tell you that for the official release on the 15th, One World, it's offering a special spotlight on the film, hosting not only 3 screenings with discussions with the protagonists, but also the debate as a separate slot on Sunday 17th. And also the festival proposed the protagonists to hold the workshops, several workshops on themes connected to the film. If Christian and Grit manage to make it, and I really hope so, they will hold a workshop about awakening sensuality through immobility, which is basically dealing with this reality that if some parts of your body or some senses are limited, the other senses are compensating, are getting enhanced. So, and this is the area of their workshop, and then maybe you can introduce yourself, the workshop that you are doing. What do you think? Laura and Hannah are holding a workshop as well.
The title is Welcome to Your Sexual Desires. We will start with a warm-up, which is conducted by Laura, and then we will try to... Sorry? Okay. Always make me unsure. And after this, we start discussing about our sexual desires, and I think I will start with one of my favorite sexual desires.
I think it was fantasies. Welcome to your sexual fantasies.
Not
Desires, but I think we talk more about fantasies.
Okay.
Nuance.
Fantasy desires, it's the same.
It's also good to keep us a bit surprised for that part. Okay, my question was, actually, I have 2 questions. First, the idea, and I understand that it is your idea when you realize that, okay, what you knew is really not...
I don't know nothing.
Exactly. I know that I don't know.
Yes.
Okay. So I got this. I have already the answer. And the second answer, the second question was about the point that we didn't discuss yet, the umbilical cord that you mentioned in the film. And if you can just detail this part, and I don't know how was it in the beginning and how is now after when the film is here.
Actually, in a way, I answered a bit the question because the project was a sort of trying to disconnect from this, to cut the umbilical cord, because it's like we grow up with this like deeply imprinted model of reality that it's very difficult to shake and to restructure afterwards. So this whole research that we all went through was an exploration in this sense. And like many ideas got really destabilized on the way. Like I started to discuss about my perspective on sex work, on sexual services that got completely changed. Also my view on beauty changed a lot. Like there are so many beauties out there which don't have anything to do with the classical idea, like the Greek idea of beauty, or the beauty which is promoted everywhere in the media. My ideas on disability and intimacy got really reshaped And like everybody else, I was looking at Christian and Grit in the beginning with certain preconceptions, like Grit is the strong, support, and he is the vulnerable one taken care of. Well, it's not at all always like that. The balance is very well kept. And at one point it's beautiful when Grit is saying in the film that she feels embraced in Christian's arms. It was like she didn't realize, it's not about him not having arms. He has arms, the support arms. It felt like poetry, these kind of moments. And actually, there is, going back to your questions about this whole knowledge, which actually it's existing for more than 100 years in psychoanalysis, in psychotherapy. And this is dealing with this very natural aspects of our lives with the firesc, I don't know how to say. They are not something wrong, something to be ashamed of. They are part of our personality, our body, our intimacy, our sexuality. They are something natural. But it's so difficult to talk about it. There's so much shame, so much guilt. And this whole journey, this whole exploration that we did together basically brought a sort of a, let's say, more self-acceptance and more openness, not only towards yourself, but also towards the other, which can be so different, but is just another human being. And this whole discussion about sexuality and how important is sexuality in our life as a sort of a key to our subconscious. This is actually the point that Mr. Bader is doing, and this is why the workshop that the wonderful ladies here are doing, it's actually about, I think, it's about what's behind the sexual fantasies and our behavior in intimacy. Because that can give an understanding of deeper dynamics of our psyche, which are at play not only in our sexuality, but also in our family life, in our, we are not therapists. We just, we are just explorers, and we read some books, and we are interested in self-exploration. And in general, I see therapy like this. In Romania, there is this preconception that therapy, it's you are the doctor to repair yourself, and it's a shame to say that you go to the therapist because, it's like you are mad. I don't see therapy like that.
Just to add, it was a little bit short. The intent of the workshop is to learn to express your certain sexual desires. That's the real intention of that, because I made the saying that it's about small talk. Yeah? Never talk about politics, never ever talk about the church, and never ever talk about sexuality. So normal people are not used to talk about sexuality with partners, without partners, even realize their desires in their own personality. Yeah? And this is the intention to help a little bit. Yeah? And so we make some exercises which are concepted by Laura, and then we will try to talk a little bit about it. That's the concept.
And I follow up on a little bit what we were talking about, what you've just spoken about. It's about shame, and just being able to, my exercise is about being in the present moment and accepting the feelings that you have in the present moment, which we very often stick under the carpet, like that. And it's about not feeling ashamed about one's fantasies. So that's what the two.
Laura?
Yeah, hi.
I was through the film, I kept wondering more about you and what you do in real life, what is your... So do I. So I was very surprised to hear you're an actress. So the question is very simple. Why did you want to do this project in the first place? Why did you get into the movie?
Well,
really, honestly.
You don't necessarily know what you're getting yourself into right from the beginning.
What did you hope at the beginning, or what was your idea?
I'd actually sort of basically stopped acting. I stopped in 2000, it's like giving up a drug, isn't it? I stopped. In 2009, and I did a film in 2013, I think. And just after, and it was coming out in 2014, 2015, and then I got this phone call from my agent. And the way it happened, because it fell out of the blue, it fell out of the sky. And the way it happened, it was very, very magical, because I wasn't expecting this phone call, I wasn't expecting anyone to offer me a part in a film, because I do more theatre than I do film. And I actually don't like really doing film. So you can see the contradiction. And my agent rang me up saying, you're up for a lead part in a Romanian film. And I said to my agent, don't you think there's been a mistake? And my agent burst out laughing. She's got this incredible laugh. We had a good giggle. And I was sent 5 pages on the project. And I had to send off what Adina would call a diary, which was to say something to my lover, which was difficult to say. And I think I had a week to do it in, and I hadn't read that it had to be only 3 minutes, so they got 10 minutes. And I just thought about it, and I did it, but without any kind of difficulty, in the sense of I just kind of thought about the subject, which I found very inspiring. And it had to do a lot in what I'd read, which was also the theory of attachment, which is, I think it's an American psychiatrist.
It's UK.
About how your first caretaker, which isn't necessarily your parent, the relationship with the first person that looks after you, is going to determine how you will live your life with your lover. Intimacy. And so I thought about that, and I sent this off, but like, you know, just a bottle out to the sea, and I forgot about it.
Oh, Romania.
Just like that. Just seemed to know like that, and I thought, go off to Romania, you know. And lo and behold, a week later, I got a phone call saying, would you go out to Bucharest? And I don't think I was meant to have received this, but there was a list of what Adina was looking for. And, you know, acting was 1 out of 10 things. It was not being afraid of being naked. I thought, well, I won't talk to her about that.
I think I said feeling comfortable with your
There
body.
was something about being free, and there was not being afraid about having done a lot of therapy, group therapy. There was to bring personal objects. Anyway, so I just thought it was a challenge. It was a challenge about going to a meeting and attempting to be as free as possible. So right from the beginning, there was this kind of, I don't know, there was just something I really liked about the way it happened. And I think sometimes the way things happen kind of foresee how it's going to continue. You know, if things start off difficult, you don't really want to continue. And so I went to the meeting with this personal kind of challenge, and I met Adina for 4 hours, and I felt very comfortable. And a week later, I got an email saying, would you like to read the script and come on board and do the research? And she sent me the link to a film which she'd made, which I absolutely adored. And quite frankly, there was absolutely no reason why I'd say no. So...
Maybe the money?
No. And because I think ultimately, if I chose to do acting in the first place, it's because, as I said before, there is this quest to go beyond myself. And I do think being free is what I've always wanted, because I've always felt unfree and inadequate. So I chose a job which is very uncomfortable, but which has confronted me with my limits. And I felt comfortable to do it with Adina. But I didn't know exactly what was being asked of me. And sometimes it's better not to know before. And I don't mean that in any way I have any regret, but the more you know, the more that little voice can say, "You're never going to manage. Stop. You're really bad. Stop it. Stop. The less you know, the better it is. For me, anyway.
And how does it feel at the end when you see yourself on the screen? And
well, I must say, I hate seeing myself on screen. But the first time I saw bits of the film when I went to go and do the post-sync. So I already got over that, oh God, it's me. And then I saw the film just before we saw the film in Berlin. And since I'd seen myself before, that had kind of, and I was so proud to be in the film. And I apart from a few moments when me and Hannah were giggling a little bit, Nadina was saying, "Why are you laughing?" I really forgot about myself in the film, and I really was a spectator, which is quite something when you're in a film, to actually sit back and watch the film as a film rather than something you're actually doing in the film. And I felt the film was really powerful, and I already thought that Adina was very talented, so that just confirmed it. And I felt so pleased to be in it and to have participated and managed to give as much as I could give.
And one last question for Adina. I had two, but I didn't say at the beginning. So Laura and one for Adina. Thank you. Adina, why did you choose to put yourself in front of the camera? Why did you choose to bring your own story together with the others?
Yeah, and that's a good question, but I'm afraid it's a bit too long conversation. I just would like to ask both you and also you, how it was for you, the fact that the filmmaker was there in the film. Because it's part of the dialogue with the audience. So I wanted to understand a bit how it functions for you, because I remember you had a very strong reaction after the film, and you talked about that, basically.
To see you there.
Huh?
To see you there.
To basically this whole meta cinema layer of the film, in which the film was talking to you directly, basically through me. I mean, the filmmaker and the camera is a medium.
Yeah. It was a connection between me and what it was before, after you, sorry. And yeah, now when I'm thinking back to the movie, I'm going back in the movie, because I wasn't only on the seat, I was in the movie. And I was understand something that is very important. Sometimes I need someone like you was there, and it was a connection actually between me and my body and my sexuality and my everything, what it means me. And I was questioning, I was asking me one thing. When did I feel free, as you said, to be free, to just be, doesn't matter, naked, how much naked, fully naked, and to feel free, never. I never feel it. I'm always going on screaming when I'm watching myself, because I'm not enough. Because as maybe you saw the people in the movie, I see myself, and I see myself in your eyes, in society's eyes. And it's very deep for me, this connection. And your presence there, your connection there, I don't know how to name it. Because somehow it's showing me that we have, I'll repeat the word, I'm trying to find another word, but I cannot. That connection it's important to have that connection and to find it. To don't deny it, you know, because mostly or daily life we are saying, nah, it's not me. I'm okay with my body. I'm okay with my sexuality. But it's not like this. I guess we, all of us, woman or man, I would say also trans persons, man or woman, we have this kind of boundaries with ourselves. And for me, it helped me a lot to see people which was beyond these boundaries. A person which has, for me that was, I don't like, I don't know how to say, very important to see a person with disabilities, which was free. I never was free like that person. I never opened myself to myself like that person. And it's a huge feeling. When I left the movie, I was like, I'm a little being, yeah? And I have to grow. I have to break myself, my inside and my brain, to don't judge, as I said before, to just question myself, not question the others, question myself. Yeah, I can question you, how is for you too? And it's better to question, to put questions, to ask, than to judge and to think you know. We never know. We just think we know, but we never know. If we want to know, we have to question ourselves and to put questions, to ask something which normally, because normally for me, it's for us, for everybody, it's just up to the person. Normally, it's, yeah, anyway, I was just go too deep and I lost my idea.
But you didn't lose the idea because actually you are just answering the question on how the film worked on a subjective level, because there was no plan for me and the apparatus to be in the beginning in the film. So the meta cinema layer was not there. But it became organically necessary because the film is a dialogue. So basically it was very important for us from the very beginning to involve the viewer, to involve you directly in this process.
To put you inside it.
To put you basically, to put you into the same self-reflective process as we went through. And this functions through this, also through this emotional mechanism, if you want, because the initial idea, I'm trying to keep it very brief. Let's see if I manage to put it in 1 minute. So initially, the structure of the film was the fourth wall was fluid from the very beginning, in the idea that the protagonist would talk to you, would enter into a dialogue with you. You know, that was the initial concept. But you wouldn't see the camera, you wouldn't see the whole team, or you didn't know it's a film. But there were these moments of dialogue of the protagonist with you. For this, to create this kind of dialogue, we used this device, which is called teleprompter, which is not our invention. It's used by Rolf Maurice for many years, by television as well, which it's a technical device which has an emotional quality, in the sense that when the protagonists were talking to me, they would see me in the lens. So, like this, they would talk directly with the audience. The problem was when we just edited the film like this, with the moments of the dialogue with the viewer and the moments of experience, of exploration, the effect, this emotional connection that we wanted didn't work. On the contrary, the moments of dialogue were creating a sort of a distance because they would distract you from the comfortable bubble of identification and suspension of disbelief that you usually go through when you go to cinema. So we actually realized, and it took 2 years of editing, to basically understand what is the organically necessary language to share such a research film, because this is a research, it's a process, to share this process with the viewer and also to bring the viewer inside. And basically we understood gradually that the way we actually experience cinema, it's you go in the room and you have the cinematic body on screen, which is very separated from your own body. You enter into that identification process, the suspension of disbelief, but still, the bodies are disconnected. And for us, it was very important that this separation doesn't exist. And for this reason, it became organically necessary that the camera and the whole process, it's inside the film. So you as a viewer, you know at every moment from the very beginning that you are not in a bubble of suspension of disbelief. You have a very privileged access through the camera, through the cinematic eye, to the life of these people who also want to share with you. They share these very sensitive areas of their life and they want to enter into this dialogue with you. They invite you in. So the camera and me function as a sort of an emotional medium, if you want, between the two, between the experience in the world on screen and you, the viewer. And there was this whole question, do I need to also share, it's enough to just be present as an observer, or do I need also to share part of my own emotional motivation? So there was another moment in the editing when we realized that it doesn't work without my presence in the film, without my emotional motivation, because if you don't know why I'm there, why this whole mechanism is happening, you immediately judge us of distance, manipulation, control, disconnection, whereas we were going through the very same process like everybody else. The same vulnerability, the same questioning process. So it's actually, I think it was 3 minutes, we had to bring the process in the film. Of course, it was a balance to find. And before we close, I would like to call here Bianca. Bianca was supposed to be with us on stage today, the producer of the film, who would like to share some very important things with you. Can you join us?
Yeah, I was gonna say that I'm the one doing the nasty work all the time. I'm saying we have to go. The cinema is no, I'm kidding. I'm just very happy to see a lot of people staying for the debate, and I'm sorry I was late. But I just wanted to say that this whole thing that we are trying to do here in having Laura and Hannah and Christian and Grit with us is very important, as you've said before, but it's also part of an effort to change a little bit the perspective of people on cinema and what it can do. Basically, we're doing the distribution in Romania by ourselves, so we didn't have any Romanian distributor picking up the film. However, we've had very valuable insights from our colleagues from several distribution houses like Transylvania Film and Voodoo Films and stuff. So they gave us a lot of insight, but one of the reasons was that the film is so special that it needs a certain dedication and a commitment that a company that distributes several films at the same time would not have the time to devote to the film. So we had this very small team of people, and if they're not asleep by now, look, Gabi is yawning over there, I saw you. Gabi Suciu in the back, our distribution coordinator, raise your hand please. And Alexandra Buzoianu, PR, Christina Goya, he went to the toilet, I know. And Alice Stoicescu, she's over there, she's our graphic designer. Who else is Christina? Where is Christina Petra, our assistant? Yeah.
8 bucăți.
Yeah, like we're trying to do this, and every time we see people staying with us until the end, I try to give a little wrap up and ask everybody to help us spread the news, because we're doing this on very limited resources. Doing distribution in Romania is very hard. We're very happy to have screenings here in Elvira, because they're one of the cinemas that are very dedicated to showing films, and there aren't many in the country. So what we've discovered is that people have an immense power of influence on each other, and actually the word of mouth is the best asset that you can have for a film. And we have a Facebook page where we post everything related to the film, like events, not only in Romania but also abroad, because there's a lot more happening with the film internationally as well. And I encourage you to just like the page, and if you find any content relevant there, share it, because it will help people know that the film exists. It's not like I'm asking for free advertising, but it's just if you do feel that the film brings something and can bring something to somebody you know that could benefit from watching this film, I think it's worth sharing. Yeah.
Touch Me Not film page. Facebook.
Yeah, .facebook. And Instagram. Okay, so Alexa, thank you very much.
Thank you too. It was a pleasure to be here. You're a gorgeous team.
Thank
gorgeous
you.
team, a gorgeous.
And thank you, ladies.